Welcome to Hometown Happenings. I'm Carol McCarthy here today at an area lake with Lori Clark from R&B Labs and Dan Olson from the MPCA, and we are going to be touring the lake today. We're going to have an occasional series on Hometown Happenings here about loving our lakes to death. We all like to be at the lake in the summertime and we enjoy the lake, but sometimes we do things that aren't so good for the lake. So we're going to take a little tour and we're going to have Lori talk about water quality and how your yard and your shoreline can affect water quality. She'll give us some ideas to do things that we can do to help our lake water quality as well. So, and Dan Olson with the MPCA will also be commenting on some of the shoreline and some of the issues that you see with these well-manicured lawns as opposed to some of the more wild lawns.
Right. That's, you know, we do like to take care of our lake places, and that's great, and we encourage people to do that. But when it comes to right along the lakeshore, that's where we would like people to spend a little time thinking about how they might keep their shorelines remaining a little more natural, which is going to help keep fertilizer and other things that are on the lawn from getting into the lake and causing them problems that we'll talk about a little later.
All right, very good. So we will embark on our journey with Lori and Dan, and we'll be back with more Hometown Happenings. All right, we're trolling along the shoreline here on an area lake, and we're looking at some of the shoreline, some of the examples of maybe good and not so good shorelines for lake water quality. Comment about this. This one looks a little bit more wild. We've got some bulrushes here. We've got some reeds, it looks like.
Yeah, in this particular lot, you know, there's still a lot of the natural bulrushes in the front that haven't been cleared out, and that's good habitat for bass and other fish. And so, you know, if you've got bulrushes in front of your place, the DNR does allow you to cut a path 25 feet wide for boat access and swimming and that type of thing. And we, you know, you like to limit it to that because, again, that's going to preserve that habitat for bass and fishing that people enjoy on our lakes. And so if we, you know, if we try to clean them up too much and make them look too nice and neat, then we're going to lose that habitat and we're going to lose the fishing that we also like to do. So what we try to establish is that balance where open it up for swimming and recreation, but also leave some to protect again, the fish habitat, as well as helping to prevent fertilizer from getting to the water. And that's really why we like to keep an area right along the shore natural, because that's going to create a buffer strip or a filter strip that's going to filter out fertilizer and any other contaminants that are going to be trying to make their way to the lake. And so that's what we like people to do, is right along the shore if they can, and maybe not necessarily for the entire lot, but at least a percentage of the lot, keep that shoreline natural to help keep fertilizer and other nutrients from getting to the lake and causing algae blooms and those other things that we don't like to see happen in the lake.
So Lori, is this true what Dan speaks of? I mean, your R&B, tell us first off what R&B Labs does.
R&B Laboratories has a program for lake monitoring, and so we collect or get in phosphorus and chlorophyll A samples, and then every month for May through September we take those samples and just it's a nice gauge to where the lake is in its health for water quality.
All right, and do you find the certain chemicals that people would use on their lawns, say, you know, in lakes that are, say, have more manicured lawns than others?
Yeah, one of the main nutrients that's limited in fresh water is phosphorus, and Minnesota is fortunate that our lawn fertilizers are not sold with phosphorus in them, but phosphorus can come from other sources. And so phosphorus is the limiting nutrient in our lake. So when we get more of it in, then the plants in the water can produce more, and that's when we get those big algae blooms. And with these bulrushes and cattails, they're wonderful for water quality. The phosphorus will eventually, it's normally attached to the sediment, so it will eventually settle out into the bottom of the lake, and the plants do a wonderful job of keeping that sediment stable and in the bottom. If we get boats in there and if we take those plants out, then the sediment is more likely to resuspend into the profile, and then we have the phosphorus becomes available for the plants, and then you have the algae blooming.
We're on an area lake here in the Detroit Lakes area talking about how we love our lakes to death. I mean, you know, we were talking about how people come to the lake and they kind of get back to you know, they love the water. They love to use the lake as a recreational for recreational activities, and they do a lot of things that aren't necessarily good for this lake. I mean, these lakes are a draw in Minnesota, and if we don't take care of them, they're not going to be so much of a draw. I mean, you won't be able to, when there's algae blooms, I mean, they're not swimmable, and plus the fish die off, and so our fishing industry goes.
Yes, it could even be a health hazard for individuals.
Right, and so we're looking at some of the shoreline now. Is rip-wrapping and putting stones on your shoreline, is that something that is healthy, or is that something you want to avoid?
It definitely is a shoreline stabilizer, so if you are having problems with erosion, riprap might be a solution. Unfortunately, you're losing that natural vegetation, you're losing that root stabilization of the soils, and you're losing that filter. So if you're applying fertilizer, or if you have pets and there's pet waste and you have a rain event, that phosphorus and those waste products, which might just be nutrients, would be moving off your land into the water. So a natural vegetative shoreline is going to give you a nice filter for that.
All right. And is there a way really to reclaim? I mean, have you done irreparable damage? You know, once you say you manicure your lawn and you put all the fertilizer on. I mean, is there a way to reclaim it?
Absolutely. Even with riprap, you could put in some Virginia creeper or another vine. You could put something in there to make it more vegetated. But you can also just let it go back to the way it was. This property we're coming up to shortly had an ice ridge, and they left it, and they just let it revegetate. And the natural plants, the seed source is still there in the soil, and it's coming back beautifully. There's also native prairie nurseries, plant nurseries in the area that you can get seed sources, or you can get plant plugs. Those are just little starter plants, and just get in there and plant those. And if you talk to nursery specialists, you'll find you can plant in shaded areas or sunny areas, so you can really vegetate based on your soil type and your sun or lack thereof sun.
And you want, of course, native plants to the lakes, but that's not necessary. That's not necessary.
Ideally, yeah. Your Kentucky bluegrass, which most people have in their lawns, the root structure gets to be a couple inches, 2, 3, maybe 5 inches. Some of your native grasses and forbs, in the right setting, get down 7, 15 feet. So you're really creating a nice soil structure for infiltration to get that water to go into the soil as a filter. Just like a carbon filter or something else, soil and plants are a filter for water. So if you can get that water to go into the soil and then move into the lake, that's the best option.
Lori Clark is from R&B Labs here in Detroit Lakes, and Dan Olson from MPCA, my guest today on Hometown Happenings. We're involved in an occasional series on how we're loving our lakes to death, and how we can take back our lakes once we do some damage to our lakes. We're just kind of giving you some examples of what not to do, what to do. If we were in Glamour magazine, you'd have the little black thing over your eye. We put black thing. But we're gonna throughout the summer, we're gonna take some tours and kind of give you some ideas of what you can do to help make our lakes clean and help them last into the future for our future generations. And I want to thank Lori and I want to thank Dan for being on Hometown Happenings and helping us out with this occasional series here on TV3. For TV3, along with Dan Olson and Lori Clark, I'm Carol McCarthy.